The first death. In 1963, the quiet town of Haddonfield, Illinois, was shaken by a crime no one could have imagined. On Halloween night, a 6-year-old boy named Michael Myers brutally murdered his older sister, Judith. That single act of violence marked the beginning of a legend. Michael was locked away in a psychiatric hospital, placed under the care of Dr. Samuel Loomis, a man who would spend years studying him and ultimately trying to stop him. 15 years later, on the eve of Halloween 1978, Michael escapes. Now an adult, he returns to his hometown with only one purpose: kill. His target, a babysitter named Laurie Strode and her friends. As night falls, the terror begins. Dr. Loomis, knowing exactly what kind of evil has been unleashed, rushes to save Laurie. Their final confrontation takes place inside the Doyle house. Loomis empties his revolver into Michael 6 shots. The masked figure stumbles back, crashing off the second-floor balcony. Silence. For a moment, it looks like evil has been stopped. But when Loomis peers outside, the body is gone. The lawn is empty. Michael has vanished. That was only the beginning. The fire. What seemed like just another night of terror in Haddonfield hid an even darker truth. Laurie Strode wasn't just the unlucky babysitter who crossed the paths with Michael Myers. She was actually his younger sister. This revelation made in Halloween 2 explains Michael's relentless pursuit. He wouldn't rest until the last tie to his family was gone. And so, Laurie's nightmare was far from over. Immediately after the fall from the balcony, Michael Myers reappears and follows Laurie to Haddonfield Memorial Hospital. While Dr. Loomis continues his desperate hunt, Michael begins a new massacre inside the hospital, turning the dark hallways into a death trap. Terrified and injured, Laurie desperately tries to escape, but Michael's shadow follows her at every turn. When Dr. Loomis and Laurie finally meet, they're cornered by Michael. In the final showdown, Laurie finds the courage to do the unthinkable. With a kind of precision that only happens in movies, she shoots Michael in both eyes. Blood runs down his mask, and the killer is left momentarily blind. But even then, he keeps moving forward, guided only by his instinct to kill. That's when Dr. Loomis makes his best choice. Inside the operating room, he releases the gas and with a look of sacrifice causes a massive explosion. Michael staggers through the hallway, engulfed in flames, a vision straight of hell. Each step is heavier, each movement slower, until finally he collapses to the ground, motionless, and the fire finishes the job. It looks like the end, but evil doesn't burn away so easily. The night without Michael.
2 more days to Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. 2 more days to Halloween, Silver Shamrock.
You might be wondering, what about the third movie? Well, after the final showdown in Halloween 2, the producers had a different plan to turn the franchise into an annual horror anthology for Halloween, each with its own unique story. And Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, was the result. After 2 bloody nights in Haddonfield, the series took a completely unexpected turn. Instead of Michael Myers, the terror this time came from somewhere else. A sinister corporation called Silver Shamrock that made masks for kids. The plan to trigger a deadly ritual on Halloween night, turning fun into a nightmare. But this was just a standalone story, with nothing to do with the events in Haddonfield, so we won't dig too deep into it. It wasn't until the next film that the masked killer returned to reclaim his throne of terror. Return. After the financial disaster and cold reception of Halloween 3, franchise needed to go back to its roots. Ignoring the previous film's plot, the producers decided to bring back the most iconic figure in horror, Michael Myers. In Halloween 4, we learned that Michael survived the 1981 fire, though he remained in a coma. When he's being transferred, he wakes up after hearing about his niece, Jamie Lloyd, the only living relative, and heads back to Haddonfield to continue his killing spree. The whole town becomes a battlefield with armed locals trying to stop the evil that's returned to haunt them. Out of nowhere, Michael climbs onto the truck carrying his niece and wipes out all the men assigned to protect her. That leaves only Rachel Curthers, Jaime's foster sister, and the one looking after her that night. With that, in mind, Rachel makes a bold move. She takes control of the truck. Suddenly, she slams the brakes, sending Michael flying. When he gets up, he's hit full force. Everything seems calm. Jamie even approaches her uncle to say goodbye, but the man, without a shred of humanity, doesn't hesitate. He tries to kill her. Before he can, the police and townspeople take matters into their own hands. It looked like the end, but at the start of Halloween 5, we learned he escaped the ambush. On the brink of death, Michael is found by a lone hermit who nurses him back to health for a whole year after he crawls from the pit into a nearby stream. Then the next Halloween, Michael wakes from his coma, kills his unlikely savior, and begins the hunt again. He returns to torment his niece, Jamie Lloyd, who's now mute and deeply traumatized. And remember Dr. Loomis' sacrifice in the second film? Well, at the end of Halloween 4, we see he also survived the explosion, though his face is scarred and his hand badly burned. So, now in the fifth film, Loomis is no longer just the psychiatrist trying to contain evil. Obsessed with stopping Michael once and for all, he discovers Jamie has a psychic connection to her uncle. Decides to use her as bait for a trap. The hunt intensifies, leading to a final confrontation in the old Myers family house where Michael once killed his sister, Judith. After another bloody night, Dr. Loomis is willing to do anything to end the evil haunting Haddonfield. This time, he decides to flip the game, using Jamie as bait. Loomis lures Michael Myers into a trap. Suddenly, a heavy metal net drops on the killer, pinning him down. Loomis doesn't hesitate. Fueled by rage, he attacks Michael with a wooden beam. Strike after strike until the creature finally seems to give in, knocking the masked figure to the ground motionless. The police arrive and take Michael into custody, evil finally behind bars. Or at least, that's what it looked like. At the very end of the film, a mystery appears. An enigmatic man in black storms Haddonfield's police station. In a sudden massacre, he kills every cop and blows up the cells. When the smoke clears, Michael's cell is empty. He's been freed. This bizarre twist sets the stage for the next movie where the secrets behind the macabre rescue start to unfold. The final showdown. 6 years after the events of Halloween 5, Michael Myers is still on the loose and his niece Jamie has been held captive by the Cult of Thorn, a dark sect that believes Michael is the embodiment of an ancient curse. The cult forces Jamie to give birth to a baby, part of a twisted ritual to keep the curse alive. The baby's parentage is never made fully clear, but all signs point to Michael Myers himself being involved, making the story even sicker. Dr. Loomis, now older and disillusioned, returns to Haddonfield for one last attempt to end the curse that's haunted him for years. During the film, we discover that Michael is indeed controlled by an ancient curse that drives him to kill. In the middle of this dark storyline, the most unexpected showdown happens. Tommy Doyle, the little boy who survived that first night of terror in 1978, returns and injects the killer with a corrosive substance, making Michael writhe in pain. Without hesitation, he grabs a heavy lead pipe and unleashes his fury on the masked figure, blow after blow until Michael lies on the ground, motionless. It seemed like the end. Evil finally defeated. But the conclusion isn't that simple. When Dr. Loomis goes back to check on the body, all he finds is Michael Myers' mask lying on the floor. Right after we hear Loomis' scream echo in the dark. The film doesn't show what happened, but it suggests Michael escaped and maybe attacked his old pursuer. This is the last time we see Myers in this timeline. The storyline ends here, and the character would only return years later in a new reboot of the franchise. When it comes to horror movies, the end is always a relative term. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to keep up with all the videos, because just like Michael Myers, we always come